I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of the Faculty here at Marymount Manhattan College, and I'd like to welcome you to Marymount Manhattan College today. We're very proud to be able to host this conference. I hope that you have a great evening today and day tomorrow. I've looked at the itinerary of the conference. I will say that the presentations are fascinating. I think for Marymount Manhattan to host this conference is particularly apropos. When one reads our mission statement, I hope you all have a chance to do so. The purpose of this conference is so consonant with the mission of the college, and we're really delighted that you're here today. I do want to say that since you'll be here for a day and a half, more or less, that please forgive any inconveniences that may occur because of our construction we're doing this summer. As you may know, some of you, we have several large construction projects going on, and including on the weekend. Some work on the Great Hall, where the dancers are, some work on the 3rd and 4th floor to create a student commons, and work on the library to improve the air and the carpeting and many other aspects of the library, all of which will be done in time for our reopening in September. This is all made possible by the generosity of our donors. But you may see over the course of the conference people carrying pieces of concrete past you. Please just set aside. Hopefully nothing will go wrong, but I just wanted to forewarn you that there is construction going on. But we've taken great care to make sure the conference won't be disturbed. I'd like to take just a moment to acknowledge the chairman of our Board of Trustees, Louis Martirano. And our very esteemed guest, Geraldine Ferraro, alumni of Marymount. And with that, let me just reiterate my welcome, and I hope you have a fantastic conference. Thank you.
Before I say anything else, I've been asked to ask you to ensure that your cell phones are off. So if you have a cell phone with you, just take a minute and make sure it's off. I am Sister Virginia Dorgan, the Executive Director of the Network for Peace Through Dialogue. And we're so glad to see you here with us tonight as we celebrate the opening for our conference. Dialogue is a field that's in its infancy. We at the Network for Peace Through Dialogue consider dialogue an essential step in the peacemaking process. Currently, the value of dialogue is being recognized more and more. And so we gather here to learn new things, to share our expertise, and to support one another. The program tonight is amazing and rich. We will begin with an interview with Geraldine Ferraro, an alum from this college. Then we will be invited to participate in an interactive theater presented by students from this college. And then Sandy Heyerbacher will make the link between dialogue and action. Sandy is the founder and director of the National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation, probably the biggest dialogue-centered organization in the United States. This is our kickoff for our very innovative, impressive, intensive, varied workshops for tomorrow, which begin at 9 a.m. But there's coffee at 8. And as those of you, all of you who are signed up for the conference know, we're going to have 4 sessions throughout the day. So I just know that, how dedicated you are to participate in this, and it will be very enriching, you know. I'd like all the people who have been on the planning committee to please stand up. And they're scattered around. We look in the back. Faculty from Marymount Manhattan College and people from the Network for Peace Through Dialogue have been working on this since since last summer. We've done quite a job of putting it together. There are two people I want to acknowledge who are not in the room because I don't think they are. Probably out there doing registration. One is Liz Graven, who was the coordinator, our conference coordinator. And the other, Emily Brown, who's a student here at Marymount, who has volunteered more than 100 hours. Very dedicated to helping pull together all the details of this. And is Emily in the room? Here's a little ad. The Network for Peace Through Dialogue has a book on sale outside. It's called Who Dialogues? And it's an outcome of 6 sessions that we had during the fall and winter of dialogue professionals in the New York City area. And it's a compilation of those discussions. It is, the author is, I see the author, Peggy Ray is sitting right back here. It's for sale at the big price of $5. Okay, so if you're interested in the field, you will find it helpful, and it's meant for beginners in the area. So it covers a large gamut of different types of dialogue. We are also going to probably run that kind of a series again this coming fall, which is for any people who are very interested in dialogue and want to meet together over 6 sessions, and we do that in the New York area. We want to offer a nice thank you to Eli's, who donated our sandwiches, and to Mr. Wright's Fine Wines and Liquors, who has donated some wine that we'll have tonight. So we want to make sure we acknowledge them. And thank you for coming tonight, for your dedication in making this world a better place. And I know the interactions here will be fruitful. We're going to also thank very particularly Marymount Manhattan College for all of the encouragement support for having this conference. Now, Sister Kathleen Kanet will introduce our esteemed guest, Geraldine Ferraro.
As president of the board of directors of the Network for Peace Through Dialogue, I also want to welcome you to our 209 conference, Dialogue in as Action. As a member of the Religious of the Sacred Heart of Mary, I am particularly pleased that we are here at Marymount, as it was the Religious of the Sacred Heart of Mary who began this college in 1936, and they offer quality education for diverse populations in need of higher education. Geraldine Ferraro was one of the women who benefited from the quality education here. Geraldine has been an inspiration and a role model to all. For most of us, what we remember most is that Jerry, in 1984, made history, and she was the first woman nominated as vice presidential candidate. What a joy it gave to women and to all that this boundary line was crossed. Jerry is an intelligent and ardent worker. Early on, she taught grade school and went to Fordham, got her law degree, and married John Soccaro, who accompanies her here tonight, and raised her 3 children. After raising her 3 children, Jerry began her political career. She has been a tenacious and ardent worker for human rights. In the Queens County District Attorney's Office, she started the Special Victims Bureau related to the prosecution of sex crimes, child abuse, and domestic violence. She won a congressional seat where she worked hard to uphold the rights of those in need. She spearheaded efforts to achieve passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. After leaving the U.S. Congress, she served as the Commissioner of Human Rights to the United Nations. After some conflict, in her own words, she said to her team, "Let us do what we are sent here to do, decide important questions of human rights on their merits and not avoid them." And this she continues to do to this day. We are grateful she said yes to this invitation and her interest in dialogue. We are grateful for that. We look forward to the insights she will share about her experience of dialogue. Lawrence Berg, a member of the Board of Directors of the Network for Peace Through Dialogue, will interview Geraldine. Again, thank you very much, Jerry, for being with us today.
Grabbing his arm. It's not because I'm a little old lady, which I am, but I just spent the day in the hospital, so I'm a little wobbly on my legs, but I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm gonna be all right. I had to laugh when I listened to Sister Virginia. She speaks so slowly, and I don't remember, maybe about 5 years ago, I was at Marymount all the way. I was a Prepsy at Marymount in Tarrytown. I went to Marymount when my father died when I was 8. I went the following year, I was 9. And the nuns were like mothers to me, so I have retained a very close relationship with the nuns throughout the years. And Mother de Victoire was my elocution teacher. For those of you who are very young and don't know that term, it's a speech teacher. She also taught me how to take leave of the Queen in case it was absolutely necessary. And Teen Artichoke, which I have now shown my grandchildren how to do. They're doing that very, very well. But I went up to give a speech up there for something they asked me to come. I said, of course I will, to tell them what was going on. I was go down. She's sitting in a wheelchair, and by now she's 92 or 93. And I walked over and said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "I'm fine." She said, "Jerry, could you speak more slowly?" I was at my grandson's graduation of his race on Wednesday, and there were 2 speakers, and they were speaking so fast. I leaned into my husband. I said, "They need Sister to pick up." In any event, I'm delighted to be here. I love the school. I'm great to see you again, Lou, and to see all of you here. But I think this is such a tremendous opportunity. It's a type of thing that if you take a look at the world problems that we're now having, if there were more dialogue, we would have more peace. We wouldn't be in the position that we are now with North Korea and Iran. And I don't know how the elections worked out today in Iran, but I certainly hope that the young people of that country will finally have their voices heard, and hopefully we will have a new leader. I don't know when the results will be in. But in any event, if there is more dialogue, I think this would be a much more peaceful world, and it would be better for all of us, all. So, I didn't want to interrupt your program, but I did want to.
This is perfect, thank you. We actually want to try and pull some more of those ideas and thoughts out of you with looking back at your experience in your work. We see dialogue as an opportunity for people with differing views over important issues to have an opportunity to learn more about what each other is thinking, their points of view. Not necessarily agree with each other, perhaps, but understand. So perhaps you could give us a few experiences that you might have seen that in your work. That kind of
Sure.
Start with that.
Let me start perhaps with the DA's office, and again, I saw some of the heads shaking with the Special Victims Bureau. I started the first Special Victims Bureau in the city of New York. I made up that name, Special Victims. No, NBC has not given me $1. Not $1. But, you know, I think it starts there to try to understand, you know, as a prosecutor, you know, you're wearing the white hat, and I love that job. I loved getting calls at 2 o'clock in the morning to go out and take a statement from a defendant who had just committed murder. I didn't like the fact they just committed murder, but I like the fact that you're running out and the lights are going like crazy, and it's 2 o'clock and your adrenaline is moving. This is somebody who has to sleep 9 hours a night, and it was absolutely so exciting. It was exciting to go into court and feel like you were doing the right things, but when you're in court doing the right things, you turn around, and the cases that I was handling, many of them were not only sexual abuse cases, but they were also, we implemented the battered spouse legislation, which became law in 1977, where it was a crime to beat up your wife or your girlfriend or whomever, you know, significant others, I think is the term now used frequently. At that time, it was not a crime. Cops wouldn't even come in. In 77, they passed legislation that said, yes, it is a crime. I go into, and we also handle all the child abuse cases that were referred from family court and cases against the elderly. But that's why they were called special victims. There were people who had to be treated specially in the court system. But what I found was, in many instances, these were cases that were done these are crimes that were committed in the home. And you turn around and you say, so what causes these things to go on? What situation exists in that home? And what could I do to help? Well, there was nothing that I could do to help. Absolutely nothing. But what I did do was I ran for Congress because I thought that that was the place where I could get something done. And I did do numerous things that besides trying to fight for equal rights amendment, which never got passed. But we did a lot of things where we were looking at the importance of education, early education for children. You know, things like that, healthcare for people, because if you can take away some of the problems that are in homes, sometimes you can eliminate some of the issues that arise. When I got to Congress, I think probably watching Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill talk to each other and resolve issues. They didn't agree on anything. But you know what? They always reached accommodation. It is not what you see currently in the Congress of the United States and the Senate. It is awful now.
Yeah.
All my friends who are still down there are still saying, you know, it's so partisan, you can't get anything done. I mean, they should be thinking up here, which is what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill were thinking. But you know what? You can't have dialogue if you don't have some sort of relationship ahead of time. You have to be able to trust each other. And I think that is really significant. You know, and I've seen that both where you have to trust the person who's bringing you together. And I saw that in Geneva, where I was the ambassador of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. There were some countries we could not talk to. We were forbidden by the State Department. Ultimately, the president, we were talking to them. But there were others in the Order of Islamic States. I did sit down with them, and I pulled them together in a discussion with Israel, if you could believe. We got anti-Semitism condemned for the first time in a UN document. But it was a matter of working a lot ahead of time to establish a relationship. I didn't have to establish it with the Israelis because I had a good relationship with people who were represented, but I did have to establish a relationship with the people who were represented in the Islamic States.
Was that something where you had to take the first step, and how did you find yourself reaching out to them? What was the...
And the thing about it is we were in Geneva, and it's a very, at that time it was 53 members of the commission. It is a different commission now. It can't accomplish very much because each of the regions elect their own representatives. So you have people on the commission like Cuba. You have people on the commission like China. I mean, we did not have dialogue with China. China, we put in a resolution. They fought the resolution. I won the first step, and they sat across and they said, "That's superpower." God, it really made me feel terrific. Except they were referring, of course, to the United States. But we won the first, they won the second. That's wheeling, dealing. That's not dialogue. And so we won, they won. It wasn't dialogue. It resolved nothing. But they were members, voted by the group in that region of the world. You have to have, in order to it seems to me you have to, in order to reach, some people say compromise. And that's what I guess you end up with dialogue. Not everybody gets their own way, and there is no way that China would allow us to get our way, and no way that we would allow China to get its way. You had to win or lose.
I wonder if there were any times in those experiences, when you had an opportunity where the compromise, the outcome wasn't as important as the fact that you actually got a chance to talk with the people and hear new things you hadn't heard before.
Well, yeah, but we did that more outside the work of the commission. We did that, I'd be invited over to, the end of Ramadan, the dinner for the end of Ramadan by the Egyptian ambassador. God, I ate so much. In 6 weeks, I must have gained 10 pounds. It was terrible. I don't know how diplomats do it because every meal is huge. But really, that's where you develop relationships. You develop them, over food. You develop them, and you do different things. When I was trying to get this resolution passed, this anti-Semitism, it wasn't enough just to talk to each other. What I had to do was I had to figure out a way to get, I need it passed by the entire commission, and I wanted it passed unanimously. So the permanent representative to the U.S. permanent representative, the ambassador, was going to Los Angeles for something or other, and I said, could you do me a favor while you're there? Could you go and get me a copy of Schindler's List? Now, Schindler's List was not out. It was just going to be opening in Europe like the following week. And I said, go, see it, see if you can get me a copy. Well, what happened was, when we told, who's the guy who directed Schindler's List? Spielberg. He goes to see Spielberg and he tells him what I wanted for it. And what I wanted it for is I wanted to show it the night before the vote on this whole racism thing. And so it's not enough just to talk. Sometimes you have to do other things. So I invited all the ambassadors and their wives to this special showing of Schindler's List. The next day it passed unanimously.
So that was a bit unusual in terms of procedure. It wasn't exactly working in the chambers.
That's it. It's outside too. It doesn't confine itself to just one conversation. Dialogue has to be something that builds on, it builds on a relationship.
I'm wondering about, you mentioned compromise as an outcome, and I know that sometimes there's things that people haven't even thought of before as what the goals or the solutions that they're looking for are. And when you have a chance to have that kind of meeting with people, new goals can come out of that. And
Absolutely.
Besides the compromise idea. And I'm wondering, did you experience something like that?
I'd have to go back. Specifically, I can't think of any. I mean, what we did, what you do is you take advantage of situations that arise. I mean, if you have something that you want to get done, and if it's opportune and a situation arises, I don't step back because I say, okay, that's not on my agenda for today. You move ahead. We did some, and I think with dialogue too, you have to. Dialogue is not only speaking, it's listening. And I think that's the important thing, is to recognize that other people do have some pretty good ideas, in addition to yours, of course. But it was amazing what I did do again, going to Geneva, because that was a place that was really unusual, because we were all coming from different directions. We all went there with one goal in mind, and that was to represent each of our individual countries as their representatives, and to do, we had specific things on the agenda that we had to do. So any of the other stuff that we were able to put in, we were able to work because of relationships that we developed there. There were 3 women who were ambassadors from the countries. I was from the United States, there was a woman from Australia, and there was a woman from Canada, and we became fast friends. And one of the things that we were most concerned about was, for instance, violence against women throughout the world, but specifically when it came to the issue of female genital mutilation, which was a very big topic, and not so much now, in the mid 90s, and we kept on being hit that no resolution could go into commission because of the cultural reactions that it would have in the countries, and they didn't want anybody at the commission telling them what to do. Well, what we did was we charmed a whole bunch of African ambassadors from all these countries that were using this as their culture, and we brought them in, showed them films, had them speak to people who had experienced this. We had numerous human rights organizations there who were ready to do presentations. We did all kinds of. You have to lay a basis for dialogue. You just can't walk and say, okay, let's talk. It's just not going to happen. You gotta have that. And by the way, many of those ambassadors did go back, and many of those countries, that particular things is no longer done.
So maybe I can pick your brains a bit on this. You use the phrase "we charmed them," which I think is a succinct way of saying we initiated dialogue.
Yeah.
Maybe for the thinking of what we actually need to know here, what is the charming process?
That's who you're trying to charm.
The idea of actually taking the ambassadorial level, it's very formal, it's very proper, and yet you still have to get them to come to you and open themselves up to these you show them these films and you show the people, they have to get there. So what is it that happened in the first step that allowed them to be open to that experience?
I think frequently people who have ambassador in front of their names all walk around with this, or they think they have. I have, since I'm no longer, I did not accept a reappointment or continuation of my appointment in '96. In fact, I wrote the president a letter, which I did not mail at the last election because I didn't want him to think I was writing because he was losing, or that he was going to lose. But I wrote and said I did not want to do it. The reason I did not want to do it was because I had to be away for 6 weeks. And I don't like my husband would fly over for a weekend. It was not nice. I'm not used to being away from my family for 6 weeks at a time. The first time I came back, my daughter was at the airport with a sign that said, "Welcome home." I said, "This is ridiculous. I can't do it." So I did not want to be away. And that to me was the one reason why I didn't want to go. But I found that, and when I came home, so often people would continue to introduce me or refer to me as ambassador, and I kept saying, no, I didn't earn that. That was a political appointment. I earned member of Congress. You can call me Congresswoman until the day I die. I'm very happy with that. I earned that. I worked hard for it. That's my title. But, don't call me ambassador. That was a political thing. I didn't earn that. I did a good job, but I didn't earn it. Their ambassadors, have entourage, some of them. I didn't dig that stuff. I was there to get a job done. And it was a job to represent the United States. I had specific things that I had to do, which I did do. And when you're in a formal setting, everything is taken down. Everything is a matter of record. When you're talking informally, even if you talk about when I was at Ramadan, I didn't have a clue to what half of the stuff I was eating. But you know what? That's a basis for a conversation. And teach me. And so it was not only teaching me about the food, teaching me about the experience of Ramadan, teaching me about the culture of the country, teaching me about where they're coming from, so that I can better understand them, and for them to hear from somebody who had, went to this school on a scholarship, because it couldn't have gone any other way. It's a very interesting thing. They think Americans sometimes, especially ambassadors, as all these rich people who kind of are full of themselves. Not so. So I think you have to, I keep stressing, you have to establish a relationship before you have dialogue. And when I was talking about, I mentioned about compromise, there are things that I wanted to do when I was in the Congress. And people said to me more than once, "You'll accept a little bit." I had put in the Women's Economic Equity Package, which is a very, very large package of economic legislation. We got one passed out of the whole package. It's called the Pension Equity Act. And it was so good that, as a matter of fact, in the '84 campaign, it was passed by both House and Senate, and President Reagan signed it, and then he did a commercial taking credit for my bill. In that campaign, I was furious. But in any event, the bill was passed. And it was interesting. The reason I wanted that piece of legislation was because until that time, we had a hearing. I was on the aging committee. We had a selectman on aging. We had a hearing in which women came up to me and they said that their husbands had pensions, and then when their husbands died, they were left without pension. And I said, wait a minute, didn't they have to tell you anything? And they said, no, we just have no pension. So now we're left on Social Security. Now, for those of you who don't know, Social Security does provide a minimum amount, but it is minimal. You cannot live on Social Security alone, or if you do, you're having real tough times. And so